This is Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham, and we got Scott German here, and we're going to talk some UVA basketball, maybe a little bit of Tennessee coaching search in football towards the end of the podcast. But Scott and I were, of course, courtside last night, JPJ, for now number 15 Virginia's win over Wisconsin in the Big Ten ACC Challenge, and Virginia holding Wisconsin to 37 points in a 49-37 win. Another stellar defensive effort by the Cavs, and also a nice game for Kyle Guy, Devin Hall offensively both had good games. And so Scott, this UVA team 7-0, number 15 in the country. A lot of folks coming into the season didn't have these high expectations for this team. We did. Your thoughts on Virginia basketball? What we've seen through 7 games?
Well, we've seen what we knew, the commodity that we knew we had, and that's a very solid defensive team. But I think we're a little now. I will say, with the exception of last night's game, which we scored 49 points, we've been very. The offensive has been very productive this year. We've seen a lot of promise from some of the younger players, Hunter, Huff at times, but I'm surprised. I'm most pleased with the transformation of Kyle Guy, because for those of you that may not have seen him in person, play on TV or whatever, he is just a totally different player than he was last year. It's quite obvious. A young man spent a lot of time in the weight room, spent a lot of time working on his game. He is no longer a one-dimensional player. He can go to the basket. He did many times last night. He's as capable of shooting within the arc, inside the arc, as he is outside. And I think we're gonna see a very, very special player before his 4 years are over here in Charlottesville.
Yeah, I noted this in my game column after the game recap I posted last night. Virginia getting offense in the post from unique places. We talked last year about this team, not getting points in the post. That was a big deficiency when Austin Nichols got released from the team early in the season. All of a sudden, there's no post players. Anthony Gill a couple years ago dominated the post for 2 or 3 seasons at Virginia, and there was nobody to step up to score those points in the paint. Well, last night, Virginia outscored Wisconsin 34-18 in points in the paint. Now, when I broke that down, though, last night, Jack Salt had 4 points. Isaiah Wilkins had 2 points. Mamadi Diakite had 4 points. So your post guys had 10 points, and yet Virginia had 34 points in the paint. How did they do that? Well, one reason was Kyle Guy, 5 of 5 on what are termed layups. Now, they weren't layups. I mean, they weren't run down to the basket wide open and, bank it off the backboard and let it go through the hoop. We're talking about driving baskets, dribble driving around a guy, tough shots in the lane, but still they're layups. And Scott, you and I were noting this last night. That was not part of Kyle Guy's game last year. Kyle Guy, over 50% of his shots last year were from three-point range. Last night, he shot the ball 17 times. 11 of his shots were two-pointers. He was 7 of 11 on those shots, 5 of 5 on those what are termed layups. And so Devin Hall was 2 of 3. I had it down to where Virginia on layups, or what are called layups and dunks, Virginia's guards were 9 of 14 on those shots, and the post guys were only 4 of 8. So the Virginia guards are getting in the lane, and that's creating the points in the paint for this team. And, last year's team, the knock, and it was a good knock, was that Virginia's guards just shot jump shots. They either shot, 15-foot jump shots or three-pointers. This year, renewed emphasis on Kyle Guy, Devin Hall, Ty Jerome, in particular, getting into the lane and scoring points from point-blank range. You got to work to get there, but they're doing it. And as a result, this team, which, we know is offensively challenged in the post, hey, they're dominating the post against a Big Ten team, and Kyle Guy's transformation a big part of that.
Absolutely, and you're right. They show up on the box score as layups, but they're not what you would consider a layup, like what they do in the pregame drills, snowbirds or whatever. They were contested, heavily defended layups that he had to use his newfound body strength to pull off. And the other aspect of Guy's transformation, if you will, he's become a much more effective defensive player. We talked about that last night during the game. There was a couple of plays that that he was guarding that looked like as though he may have beaten Kyle either off a dribble or just a move that got by. The Kyle guy of last year would have been sitting on the bench within the next 15 seconds, but Tony let him play through it last night as if, okay, you've earned that. And he is. He's just a overall much improved player. In fact, I don't think there's anyone close to being how much more improved he is this year as opposed to last year, both offensively and defensively.
And we talked last night in that vein. We talked about Devin Hall, and of course, Devin Hall is a proven commodity. He's a redshirt senior. He's been around the program for 5 years now, obviously. Last night, 16 points on 7 of 10 shooting. Got in foul trouble early. A couple of cheap fouls called on him in the first half. He had to go to the bench with about 9 minutes to go. Didn't play the rest of the first half. But 7 of 10 from the floor. And I noted he was 2 of 3 on those so-called layups. Had also a couple of short jumpers that were just outside of the layup range. He got in the lane, got some points too. And what's to me fascinating about Devin Hall is, the last 2 games actually, because he didn't lead the team in scoring last night, had 16, Guy had 17, but he led Virginia in scoring against the Rhode Island team in that championship game of the NIT preseason tip-off. And, this is a guy that we kind of overlook. When you talk about Virginia basketball, you talk about Kyle Guy, you'll talk about Ty Jerome. DeAndre Hunter and Jay Huff have the attention of the NBA scouts eventually when they get on the floor more and are able to show what they can do, when they learn the defense particularly. But Devin Hall is sort of a forgotten guy on this team, but he's very much a steadying influence for this group. When they needed a big basket last night, and there were a couple of times they did. In fact, after that a nearly 7-minute scoring drought, when Virginia the leads eroded from 16 points down to 9, it was Hall who hit the three-pointer that sort of propelled Virginia down the stretch to making that an easy win. He's just a guy that does what needs to be done. And I will say this, his body and his ability to get in the lane and score, I think that when you talk about who the NBA scouts are looking for, he might be a sleeper guy that gets a look just because he's a bigger guy, a strong guy who can score in the lane. Don't sleep on Devin Hall. He's a pretty good basketball player too.
Oh, for certain. And both of them. I made the remark after the game that Wilkins didn't contribute much until you pointed out he got 10 rebounds. The senior leadership this year that Virginia is getting is kind of a quiet leadership. Now, last night, Hall with 17 points. There's nothing quiet about that. He had a couple of big baskets. You talked about the one that broke that horrendous 6-7 minute scoring drought. But Wilkins, very quiet. 10 rebounds last night, played great defense. These seniors that have been around this program for a long time, they're accepting their role because there's a lot of stars out on the floor around them now, but they're quietly providing what the Cavaliers need, and that's some coaching on the court, some calming presence, and Wilkins had a great game last night, and I didn't even recognize it. 10 rebounds. I'm not sure what his offensive totals were, his point totals, but it was a very effective game, and that's what Virginia will need as this season progresses from those players.
And I'll throw Jack Salt in too. Salt didn't have big numbers. He shot the ball twice. One was a layup, one was a dunk, but made both those shots. Had 8 rebounds, but he did get beat a couple times in the first half. You and I noticed, he got beat on a couple of shots. He even talked after the game about how he can't allow those kind of plays to happen. But he held a guy in Ethan Happ, who's another guy the NBA scouts are drooling over, to 14 points and 7 rebounds. 4 of those points in garbage time when the game was already decided. Happ came into the game averaging 19 points, 9.5 rebounds a game. When you talk about neutralizing an opponent like Wisconsin, the way Virginia did, Jack Salt with 4 points and 8 rebounds, that doesn't jump out at you either. But, there was a time in that second half, during that stretch when Virginia couldn't score for nearly 7 minutes, he had 3 offensive rebounds that extended possessions. Now, Virginia didn't score on those possessions, but his offensive rebound allowed, another 30 seconds of shot clock, game clock to come off. Even extending possessions that don't score, Salt did his job last night. He's not flashy. He's not going to score. He's not going to be a 10-point, 10-rebound-a-game guy, but he's sort of a get dirty things done guy too. And on a team that has some guys like Kyle Guy and Devin Hall who can put the points on the board, they've got plenty of guys out there who can do the dirty work and make sure that things are done in that respect. So that's what's fun about this team is that you don't have a bunch of guys. You have some teams out there, the Dukes and Kentuckys of the world. Everybody's trying to angle to get to be an NBA lottery pick. This team is a workmanlike team. They're just out there getting the job done, winning basketball games. And I think that's what Virginia fans really appreciate about this group is that they're out there more focused on the win than they are about the individual accolades.
Absolutely, and we talked about your offense. There are nights, no matter how talented you are, it's going to happen to Kentucky. It's going to happen to Duke. It has happened to those teams. Just hasn't happened for entire games. There's going to be nights where your offense just doesn't show up. No reason for that to ever happen on the defensive end, and it rarely ever happens for Virginia. Last night, a perfect example. Had Virginia taken the night off defensively, they don't come away with that. They don't come away from JPJ last night with a win. They would have been beaten because you don't often overcome scoring droughts of 7 minutes and win games. But Virginia was able to survive that last night during that 7-minute drought. Wisconsin only shaved maybe 4 or 5 points off of what was once, I think, a 16-point lead. It never really felt like the game was getting out of control and getting out of hand. We talked about it, we both agreed, we never really felt as though Wisconsin was posing a serious threat or a comeback. And they had ample opportunity, but Virginia played excellent defense, and a lot of that, Salt had a couple of key rebounds off Wisconsin shots during that drought, and Wisconsin wasn't burning the basket up either. But Virginia made sure they got one-and-done shots, and Salt came up with a number of those rebounds during that stretch. So, once again, Tony's trademark of being a defensive-minded team, that's absolutely what carried the team to the win last night.
One thing I saw on Twitter overnight that I thought would be worth pointing out, we talked about this team playing defense the way we expect. I'll say one thing. I thought eventually this team would play great defense, but with the new pieces and the young guys having to take on enhanced roles, I thought this team would actually maybe grow into its defensive abilities a bit. And I thought what that means is, maybe early in the season they wouldn't play quite as good a defense as you might have come to expect from Virginia teams of recent years. They are number one, again, as we all expect on a regular basis, in the KenPom.com national defensive efficiency rating. So, they've already grown into the role they're expected to grow into. I did think that it would take a while, though, because, again, Kyle Guy, for example, last year was actually he was the worst-ranked defender on the Virginia team, and he's now playing 35 minutes a game. Obviously, the reason he's playing 35 minutes a game, he's playing great offense, but he's also playing great defense. You've got, Ty Jerome is out there playing, he was playing about 18 minutes a game last year. This year he's playing about 30 minutes a game. So, you got guys doing more. They're playing more, and they're playing great defense. But one thing I saw that I thought I'd share, a tweet. Since the 2010-2011 season, Virginia has now held a Power 5 school under 50 points a total of 50 times, which is more times combined than the rest of college basketball. Scott, what does that say about this team and this program, that they've held Power 5 opponents to less than 50 points in the last 7 years more times than the other 350 teams in college basketball.
It says a lot, but I think first and foremost, it tells you the trademark, the benchmark of what Tony Bennett basketball is all about, and that is, you don't always have to have, and Virginia's not up until this year's recruiting or last year's recruiting, they're not always getting those 4 and 5 star players. But they're getting those players that want to come there, that want to commit to Tony's mentality of playing the absolute best defense you can play, not just 30 minutes a game, but every single possession. And it proves that defense does win basketball games. It won a game last night, and it's one we can look back. We've been to just about every one of those games that those figures apply to, and there's a lot of those games just like last night. We weren't any offensive juggernaut at all last night, but got it done on the defensive end and won going away. So that is an amazing stat. But now that we've had Coach Bennett for 9 years, it shouldn't really be a surprise to anyone.
I'll correct myself. It's 29 times. In the last 5 seasons. I was mixing a couple of different tweets together, but the point being, that's still more than the rest of the country combined. And that's and again, this team has grown into its role much sooner than I expected. And Scott and I, people who listen to this podcast regularly know, I've been saying since last April that I think this team has Final Four potential. They're moving along quicker than I thought. I thought this team, and those who listen regularly, read my columns regularly, know that I said this team had Final Four potential, but also that they would have a couple of hiccups. Last night was one of those potential hiccup games. This is a Virginia team 4 years ago playing Wisconsin in Charlottesville in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, lost to this Wisconsin team on its way to a great season. Win the game last night. That team 4 years ago also lost to VCU at home on its way to that great season. They beat VCU on the road. So, this Virginia team, the closest game of the 7 they've played, and they've played a decent schedule. You're talking about wins over VCU, Wisconsin, Rhode Island, and Vanderbilt, 4 teams who played in the NCAA tournament last year among your 7 opponents. And the closest game was a 9-point win on the road at VCU. All the other wins are double digits. This team is further along than I expected, and I expected this team to maybe gel sometime in January. In the ACC schedule, kind of like that 2013-2014 team that folks will remember. It seems so long ago now, but that line of demarcation from when Virginia basketball under Tony Bennett was still a growing program to when it arrived was that loss at Tennessee. I think it was December 31st or December 30th of 2013. That I think it was 88-54 was the final score of that game. None of us had felt as low as we felt after that game because we felt like that was a good team that just got blown out and maybe they got exposed. That was the last non-conference game of that season heading into ACC play. And then, of course, they went 16-2 in the ACC, won the ACC tournament, got to the Sweet 16. And from that point on, Virginia basketball has been one of the elite programs in college basketball. That said, this is supposed to be a rebuilding year for this Virginia program. You lose London Parentes. You no longer have guys like Malcolm Brogdon, Justin Anderson. You lose Mario Shayok and Darius Thompson to transfer. That's why folks had Virginia outside the top 25 when the season started. They didn't rebuild, they reloaded, and that's the fun thing to see now. That's why Virginia basketball fans are so excited because this season started outside of people like Scott and I with no expectations, and now number 15 in the country, I think once again expectations are pretty good. This Virginia team is going to be loaded for bear when ACC play starts in a few weeks. But so Scott, I'm excited. After for me, last night's win, 49-37. I saw some people on Twitter saying, "Wow, that's sort of the Virginia of old coming back." And I thought last night was a thing of beauty. I love seeing an opponent score 37 points and struggling to get there. I think real Virginia fans think the same way. Have we gotten fat and happy, Scott, or should we look at 37 points and say, hey, That's what we expect out of Virginia basketball.
Yeah, I mean that's the way Virginia plays, and there wasn't, not sure what the actual offensive efficiency was last night, but there really wasn't. I mean, the way the game played out with the number of possessions, that game had no chance of being into the 70s. So 49 was just pretty much the way you would think it would play out based on the number of possessions that both teams had. That's UVA basketball. They're going to score more points, certainly. When they play more talented offensive teams, they're going to give up more points as well. But they played the way they had to last night to get the victory. And no, I don't think you never want to apologize for a win. And no, was that a tremendous offensive performance last night? Maybe not. There were some players that really didn't play that well offensively, but the bottom line is to win the basketball game, and Virginia did that, and they did that on the defensive end of the floor primarily.
I'm looking at the so go ahead.
One thing I want to touch on, and I say it because I had someone actually call me and ask us, and I also read some message boards and questioning, and I was just thinking, are we the only ones that get this? Is this complicated? The question was, why is Jay Huff not getting any playing time? And I think the answer to that question is just to put your thinking caps on and revert back a few years ago to Anthony Gill's first year of eligibility, when the talk was that Anthony Gill was probably the most talented offensive player that Virginia had on its roster, but he was getting only sparingly played. And the reason is obvious. Huff is just not capable. His defensive game is not where it needs to be to earn playing time. And in Tony's system, it doesn't matter how skilled you are offensively. If you're not contributing, pulling your weight defensively, you're getting one of the best seats in John Paul Jones right there on the bench.
Yeah, I'm going to look up his Anthony Gill's numbers real quick to kind of illustrate that. Point. See if I can get there real quick. Looks like I'm having trouble getting there.
Gill never took his warm-up jersey, Huff never took his warm-up jersey off last night. And this is, coming on the heels of I think he had a 15-point effort. I just think that in Tony's system, you earn playing time on the defensive end of the floor, and that's a lot of that contributed to Cal Guy's somewhat diminished playing time last year, or his certainly not getting as many minutes as he's getting this year.
I've got it up now. That was good, Scott, to help me get there. So we're getting towards December now. November 30th of 2013, Anthony Gill, as we know, eventually one of the better UVA post players that we've seen wearing a Cavalier uniform. November 30th, a win over Missouri State. He played 18 minutes. December 4th against Wisconsin, that 48-38 loss we referenced in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Gill played 20 minutes. He played 21 against Green Bay 3 days later. He played 8 against Northern Iowa on December 21st, 10 against Norfolk State on December 23rd. He played 10 against Duke on January 13th. He played 10 minutes against Maryland on February 10th. That's Anthony Gill. Now, he's a guy that eventually for that team, looking at the outputs, he was playing 30 minutes a game by March. But Gill, it took Gill a while to learn the system, and he had a redshirt just like Huff did, had a redshirt year to get used to it, and he was also a year older because he had transferred in from South Carolina. So that's a great point about Gill. It's going to take it takes time for guys to learn this system as true first-year players in that system. And, Huff will get there. Anthony Gill got there. I remember I've cited this a couple times in podcasts, but I remember that year, that first year that Gill played at Virginia after that redshirt year, interviewing him during the ACC tournament after one of the wins in the ACC tournament. And I asked Gil, "Hey man, what happened? For all this time you were having trouble getting minutes, and then all of a sudden, you've exploded for us offensively, defensively, everything else." And he said, "Honestly, what happened was it just took me so long to figure out this pack line defense." And he said Coach Bennett told him to don't worry about scoring, don't worry about what you do offensively until you figure out the pack line. And he said it was in middle of February that year that sort of the light went off, the bell went off, whatever you want to say, that it just sunk in. Here's what I need to do defensively in the pack line. And then once that became kind of like riding a bike. Once he didn't have to think about riding the bike anymore, he could just ride the bike. Then he could think about what he needed to do offensively, and then he became Anthony Gill. But it took him until middle of February, that first year that he played. Now think about when that happened. That was when Virginia took off that year. And so, it takes time. It's not just what Duke is doing right now. They're rolling the ball out there and telling those kids to play a zone defense, which your typical youth sports coach can teach you how to play a zone defense in about 5 minutes. What Tony Bennett requires of guys is very intricate. It's very patterned. You've got to know your role. You've got to know everyone else's role on the floor around you, and so it takes time. Eventually, Jay Huff will get it, and when he does, watch out. This Virginia team that's 7-0 and beating everybody right now like crazy. Wait till you see what they can do when Jay Huff, when DeAndre Hunter really get comfortable with their roles in his system.
And one other tidbit about that is, as fans, as writers, we look at the games, we watch. The only thing we see is what happens on the floor during the game. I really believe under Tony's system, and that's what we were told about Gill, is that you earn that playing time by how well you play defense in practice, how well you're out there going at it every day. And I believe that's what Tony's not seeing, is that he's not seeing that intensity that he needs, that consistency from Huff in practice that's going to warrant getting playing time during the game. So, just because he makes a couple of good defensive plays, he looks like he's holding his own out there in a few minutes that he's out on the floor, I don't think that's what Tony's evaluating. I think Tony's looking at it, what goes on 4, 5, 6 days a week in practice, not what goes on for 10, 12 minutes during a game.
Yeah, the responsibilities, for guards in the system defensively, they've got to be on the lookout for when the post guys are doubling or when there's a hedge on the pick and roll at the top of the key to be able to help out when a big tries to roll to the basket. They're there to maybe just knock a pass away or at least prevent a pass from even being attempted. But the bigs, it's not like in other defenses. Again, when Duke plays a zone with their 2 7-footers, those 2 7-footers basically stand under the basket, and then they get rebounds. They don't do much else. There's not a lot required of that. So as a result, you can stick guys out there with no defensive abilities at all, and they can be 7 feet tall, and that's what they got to do. Jay Huff at 7'1" in Virginia's system, he's got to be able to guard a guard 40 feet from the basket, because when the way Virginia defends pick and rolls, when a big sets a pick for a guard to get free, Virginia doubles that guard with the big and the guard, and then after that double, to get the ball out of the guard's hands, our big has to go all the way back from 40 feet away from the basket. He's got to sprint back to the post, because you assume that the opposing post, the offensive player setting that screen, is going to be rolling to the basket, and so he's got to be able to guard a guard 40 feet from the basket and then sprint back to the post, and do that numerous times per possession, numerous times per game. And, so as opposed to, again, standing under the basket playing a zone defense like they do at Duke, think of how athletic you've got to be to play post defense at Virginia. And that's it. It's not about standing out there shooting three-pointers and then getting back and getting rebounds and being 7 feet tall. There's so many things that are asked of a big in Virginia's offense. He'll get it. Anthony Gill got it. Akil Mitchell got it. Darion Atkins got it. It just took them some time too. So, it'll be something when it happens. Jay Huff's gonna be a magical player, and there's a reason they're talking about him and DeAndre Hunter both being NBA players. They've got to do the work though to get there, and it's going to take some time. But this team's already winning without two very good players really contributing much. Wait till they can contribute. That's going to be the time this Virginia team really takes off in the stratosphere.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know, listening to that, one of your comments, dating myself again, man, it seems almost surreal to hear someone say, playing defense at Virginia is a lot different than playing defense at Duke. Playing defense at Virginia requires a lot more thinking, a lot more effort. That's not the Duke that I grew up with, but it's true. Those two 7-footers that you talked about playing for Duke, Mike Krzyzewski's not really worried about making them great defensive players for 4 years, because the way the current landscape is in the NCAA, they're one and done, and they're not coming to Duke to become better defensive players. So, you know, maybe this is topics for another podcast, but the landscape is different now, and it's going to change, and it's going to change in a hurry, and it's going to change very favorably for UVA fans.
Yeah, I'll reference that I listened to an interview that Mike Golick and Trey Wingo on their new radio show did on ESPN yesterday with Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, and Silver made it clear that the NBA thinks, and the Players Association also thinks, that the one-and-done rule is not good for the NBA, it's not good for the NCAA, and they're going to make that a priority coming up as soon as possible, which means if the NBA makes it a priority, the one-and-done rule is going to be a one-and-done rule itself, I guess you could say. And that will change the landscape. Well, actually, it won't change the landscape for more than two programs, but it will change the landscape for those two programs. Duke and Kentucky can once the one and done well dries up. I don't know what happens to those two programs, but it won't affect Virginia and those two coaches. Yeah, it won't affect Virginia. We haven't had a one and done, thankfully, and so yeah, that's going to change. And but in the here and now, you know, we were talking about this too, Scott. As much as, you know, we all lament the one and dones, in the one and done era, you had Duke win one championship. Credit to them, they won that championship a couple years ago with one and dones. Kentucky's won one championship with one and dones, and that's it. We're 10, 12 years into the one and done era, and two of those one and done teams have won championships total. Carolina. For everything else they do wrong, one thing they do right in basketball is they have guys who largely stay for 4 years, and they played the last two championship games. I was pointing out last night when we were driving over to the game that Villanova's got guys on their team this year who played in the championship game 2 years ago. So does Carolina. Joel Berry, the point guard, was the point guard on that team. So, yeah, it's as much as the one and dones have dominated the headlines. It's the guys. It's the teams like Virginia, like the Carolinas, like the Villanovas who have players who stay for 4 or 5 years in some cases that actually win the majority of the games. So, Yeah,
it wasn't a recipe for success like everyone thought it would be.
Right.
Instant. For various reasons. Again, maybe topics for another podcast, but it did. Kentucky won a championship. Duke won one, but the last 10 years, the other 8 years have been programs that have just followed the more typical plan of 4-year players.
So, well, we'll change gears real quick, and we'll wrap up with we have to weigh in on this because everybody else has, and it's worth weighing in on this disaster of a coaching search at Tennessee. I guess if you're a fan of any other program in the country, you're saying, thank God that's not us. So we're Virginia guys. Thank God that's not us. Thank God it's not our fan base that's in the spotlight like this. But the latest is, I'm looking right now as we're talking, recording this podcast, Tennessee's apparently met with Mike Gundy, the Oklahoma State coach, to gauge his interest, which I can't imagine that anyone worth anything would be interested in his job right now after what happened to Greg Schiano. But Scott, I guess this is a loaded softball question, but can you imagine a coaching search going any worse than this one has?
No. Short of hiring someone and then a month later finding out he was a member of the ISIS or something. No, I can't imagine. Completely blown, and their AD is going to be, his head is going to be on the chopping block, and they're still, if you ask me, they're still screwing this up, because at this point, to even mention names that could potentially just add to the lineup of people that have turned you down, that have said no, is just an embarrassment. I wouldn't leak any names until I actually had someone hired and the ink dried on the contract. But that's what got Tennessee into this to begin with, because they caved into their fan base, alumni, big money donors, and decided that Schiano was not who they wanted for various reasons, all of which were bogus. But they're still doing it by leaking out names, and maybe they're doing it intentionally just to kind of float the balloon up to see if it, see what the reaction is from the fan base. They're still letting, I heard it on the radio, they're letting the tail wag the dog.
Yeah, it puts in perspective for me. We obviously cover UVA sports primarily. Talk ACC outside of that, but we focus through our lens is the UVA sports lens. I mean, yeah, okay. So Craig Littlepage let Mike London stay on 1, 2, maybe 3 years too long, but when the decision was made to make a change, there wasn't any speculation. It was a Friday, I recall, when Bronco Mendenhall got the job, and there was no, hey, we think it's going to be Bronco Mendenhall. Fans, what do you think of this? It was, we've hired Bronco, and he's talking right now about it. And I guess I feel good about being part of being in a fan base of a program that's the last two high-profile hires. When you talk about Bronco Mendenhall, the football coach, and Tony Bennett, the basketball coach, there was no wavering. They went and got the guy. That was their guy, and they stuck with it. And, certainly Tony Bennett in basketball has worked out, and the early returns clearly on Bronco Mendenhall, 6-6 season, taking this doldrums program to a bowl. They've done it the right way. And, boy, it makes you feel good to be a fan of a program. And, of course, at this stage, I guess there's 128 Division I football programs. So if you're a fan of any of the other 127, your program does it the right way compared to Tennessee. But it does put into context just how things can be done the right way, and they can certainly be done the wrong way. And Tennessee is textbook now for how things can be done the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. The Tony Bennett hire came out of nowhere. No one had Tony Bennett on the radar. Everyone had Tubby Smith, even down to tracking his plane that was a charter plane that was carrying him to Charlottesville from Minneapolis. I mean, it was comical almost. If Tennessee could put on their internet site, their homepage for football, it would not be any worse than how this has gone. A poll: who do you want to be the next volunteer coach? And just let the fans vote and choose that, and it would not have been as worse as what they've let happen, in my opinion. Letting the fans just vote on the coach at this stage.
And even then, the losing faction in that fan vote would probably claim fake news. The poll was rigged. The Russians got involved. I mean, that's how just atrocious this whole thing's gotten. And so I feel bad. I know we both have a friend, Alan White, is a friend of ours, good friend of yours, who's a big Tennessee fan. I feel bad for the Tennessee fans, I know, because the sensible ones among us, they don't deserve this. But that's what happens. That's what happens when you let the message boards run your program. And I guess every fan base has that aspect of it. I mean, we were looking at the message boards during the Virginia football game the other night. There were a lot of people questioning whether Robert Anae should continue to have his job as offensive coordinator. You look at the tech boards, Justin Fuentes is not a good coach. I mean, so there is that aspect to message boards, But the difference is you don't let those people run your program, and that's what Tennessee is falling into. So good for them, and good for the rest of us that we don't have to live with that, I guess.
So that said, Chris, when do you go down for your introductory press conference?
Well, I've given it a lot of consideration, and no, I will not be taking the job at Tennessee. I'll be hanging around Augusta Free Press for the next few years. In fact, but I did leverage it into a contract extension. That's a smart thing to do. So, and that. I think here's what you should do. If you're Mike Gundy, the only reason you're talking to Tennessee is to get a few more dollars out of your school right now, because there's no way, if you're any self-respecting coach at this stage, you can't entertain the real possibility of taking this dumpster fire of a job to satisfy this unsatisfiable, insatiable, I guess is the good word for it, fan base. That's what they're going to get now. They're going to get either a retread, they're going to get some offensive coordinator that's not going to make them happy. That's the sad reality of this. When you let the message boards run your program, you're going to get you're going to find a guy who will take the job. You're not going to find the best guy for the job, and that's what's going to happen in Tennessee.
And it could work out that you do get a great hire, but they certainly are. They certainly went the opposite way in doing it. So, I hope. I'm not a fan of Tennessee. I'm not. I don't dislike Tennessee, but this is just. It's a shame. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to think how this was butchered, I guess would be the best word.
Yeah, so let's just make sure this doesn't happen to our program in the future. We don't have to worry about it right now. It's a while, hopefully, before we have to think about any high-profile coaches anyway, Virginia. But, this is a textbook lesson in the future. In sports management classes, this will no doubt be taught of how not to do things. So I think that'll wrap us up for our podcast. Fun podcast here, talking Virginia basketball and then having some fun at the expense of Tennessee. Scott and I will get back together on Saturday. I know we have Lehigh, the Lehigh-Virginia basketball game Saturday tipping off at noon, so that'll be fun. Some college basketball. We'll be live blogging during the game. Of course, we'll do post-game wrap and recap and podcasts and everything else. So that's Saturday at noon as Virginia hosts Lehigh. And then also, we're awaiting whatever news will come either before but most likely after the ACC Championship game on Saturday night, Miami playing Clemson. Once that outcome's decided, we'll know then the destination for Virginia's bowl chance. I think it'll probably be after. So that might be worth another podcast actually following up later this week. Scott and I will probably we'll get our heads together and figure out whether we should speculate on that and then talk about it later. But yeah, there's some Virginia football news still to talk. There's Virginia basketball news to get into. So lots of Virginia sports. Of course, this time of year is a fun time of year to be talking Virginia sports. And thank you for listening. I'm going to go ahead and sign off for Scott German. I'm Chris Graham. Have a great day.